as a mayor, as an ambassador for the city to the people as well as to the world, that means that we are looking out for the best of all of our citizens of the city of Cincinnati as well as the region. And so when we passed that tax levy, that was a huge step forward in getting to the root causes of some of our problems and creating an avenue by which we can move forward as a total part of the solution. Everybody at the table who voted for that was incredible. And I just thank everybody who also supported. Thank you for that question.
Thank you very much. Moving along to question 2, the first respondent for this question will be Councilmember Mann. And this question comes from Amy Spiller. Amy?
Thank you, Katie. In a few weeks, Cincinnatians will vote on issue 3, which mandates the city to give $50 million to an unelected board to spend on affordable housing, and which would force steep cuts to police, fire, sanitation, leveraged services, and more. The chamber is opposed to issue 3, as are the AFL-CIO and the current and 3 prior mayors of the city. Many of you have stated your opposition already. If you are opposed, tell us why. And if you're not, tell us what you would cut or what taxes you would increase to pay for this unfunded mandate. And broadly, how would you as mayor address the affordable housing challenge our city faces?
2 minutes, huh? Okay. I'm opposed for 2 basic reasons. One is we don't have $50 million a year, as you suggest, $50 million a year forever. Number 2, the unelected board that council has no control over would make decisions about how $50 million a year is spent. It would make decisions about contracts that the city manager under the proposal would be required to sign. It's an unprecedented delegation of governmental authority. And I don't even know exactly what the board would do. I was thinking, are we talking about writing vouchers to allow people similar to a Section 8 program? Or are we talking about new construction? There's so much that needs to be worked through. Now, affordable housing is a real problem in our community. There are 2 ways to deal with the affordable housing deficit. The first and the best path is to create more jobs that allow people to provide for their own housing and to afford housing that is affordable. So that's why one of the keys always is development, finding ways to expand the job base in our community and a job base that pays living wages. Apart from that, the city has done quite a bit that we haven't got much credit for in recent years. I was the author of legislation that created an affordable housing trust fund. I was the author of legislation that imposed a new tax on Airbnbs with the revenues dedicated to the affordable housing trust fund. Last year, I'm chair of the Budget and Finance Committee. Our budget assigned 25% of the revenues in our TIF district funds to affordable housing. Apart from that, we have actually produced quite a bit of affordable housing in the last 5 or 6 years. There's some studies from the Department of Community and Economic Development that confirms that each year in that period, we produce 300 to 600 units of affordable housing. That's no small task. And we do that by leveraging our limited funds.
Thank you so much. I'm very sorry.
Okay, sure.
We need to move on to Mr. Pureval.
Thanks so much for the question. I don't support issue 3. I do support affordable housing, and I do understand the frustration that people feel because the city hasn't had a comprehensive affordable housing strategy. I mean, people are truly suffering because of a lack of affordable housing. I see it every day in the courthouse at eviction court. I see the results every day of our lacking a comprehensive strategy. Mothers and their children evicted and rendered homeless in the middle of a pandemic. So without question, this is an issue, and we've got to be smart about how we tackle it. We need a strategy that brings us all together to get serious about funding the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We have to leverage our city dollars, not rely entirely on the general fund, but put up some amount of general fund dollars with home dollars and CBDG dollars to incentivize and leverage our incredible partners here locally, the same partners that helped us do incredible public-private partnership successes like the Preschool Promise, like transforming our public transportation, partner with our local banks and universities and local institutional philanthropies that already have community development funds, but most importantly, the federal government to raise the resources necessary. As mayor, I will put Cincinnati in the best possible position to get federal grants. But we can't stop there. A comprehensive plan will also require a review of the city's development incentives like TIF, tax abatements, and V-Ticket to ensure that we're not only incentivizing growth, but we're also incentivizing equity. And finally, and please take a look at my plan, a few other ideas from my plan. We need a real commitment to tenants' rights. We need a housing court to hold bad landlords accountable and support tenants and homeowners who want to grow with their neighborhoods. And we have to balance the playing field in eviction court by working to ensure greater access to lawyers and legal services for people who can't afford representation. For too long, our city has not been committed to a comprehensive strategy. If I'm elected mayor, I will change
We'll
that.
need to move on to Mr. Prophett.
Yes, thank you. It's an excellent question. And let me just say up front that I believe I was the first one to endorse issue 3. But let's set the conditions. That Cincinnati has one of the highest poverty rates in the country around the cities of our size. We have over 50% of African Americans that are cost burdened. That means they pay over 30% of their income. These are working class people, mind you. Pay over 30% of their income towards housing, which is including utilities. Over 50% of them, or I should say 20% of them, are severely cost burdened. They pay over 50% of their income towards affordable housing. So this becomes a crisis, right? And so we have to ask ourselves, what are our values? And my values come from where mostly my military service that we do what is right, what is just, and what is fair. And I will tell you, our soldiers, because they don't really make a living wage. And so we provide, and this is the federal government, the Department of Defense, and for years they have provided that called basic housing allowance, right? Because they give them a supplement in order to pay for housing. And if they live in a place that the cost of living is higher, they will provide a variable housing allowance, right? For good, affordable housing for their soldiers. That's what we need to do for our citizens. Now, it's not perfect, right? But it's an amendment. We can come back and amend it again. And then people say where the money is going to come from. We've been given an opportunity from the rescue plan. Let's put 50 mil in there. And then when I become mayor, we'll hire a professional city manager and we'll get at this like other cities have done. There's scores and scores of cities that do it, and they have plans on how to fund affordable housing. But this is about working class people and what are the values that we're going to have as a city. That's what's going to attract the creative class.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Senator Thomas.
Thank you. LIST, Local Initiatives Support Corporation. It's a community development think tank. They received the Greater Cincinnati Foundation grant to do a study and make recommendations to address affordable housing in our city. And as a result of that study, they came up with what is called the Housing Our Future 10-year plan. So there's nothing new under the sun. The work has already been done. However, the plan has not been implemented to the effort of getting us on that pathway. So as mayor, the first thing I would do is just sit down and get that plan, get it going. The foundation didn't give them the money to just come up with something to put it on the shelf. So we already have a plan to move forward. Issue 3 would really stymie some areas, unintended consequences, if you will. It could cause safety issues where we may have to lay off police and fire. It could cause problems with our public service and efforts there. It would even impact poverty in a very significant way, in a negative way. So my point is that I do not support the methodology that they're using to pull $50 million out of the sky and say we're going to use that money for affordable housing. I think there has to be a comprehensive plan, and that comprehensive plan is already there under the list approach. What we have to do is sit down with those who were proponents of the amendment and say, here, let's look at this plan. Here's our pathway. It's comprehensive. The studies have done, the research, the data speaks for itself. This puts us on a pathway to affordable housing. It's a 10-year plan. So that would be, as mayor, that's what I would do to make sure we have a method by which we proceed going forward with affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Begtrup.
Everything starts with housing. If you're wondering where your kids are going to spend the night, you can't fully participate in our economy. You know, as somebody who's built a school and as the candidate who's actually built companies and created jobs and paid livable wages, I'll tell you, when families have access to affordable housing, their kids grow up in a more stable home. And all the research shows that when kids grow up in a more stable home, they do better in school, which means they do better in the workplace. They earn higher wages. They break the cycle of poverty, and I can hire them. And so can all of your businesses. So we have to do something about affordable housing, and it takes more than words. We have a city council that created an affordable housing trust fund, which is a pro-market approach. If we want affordable housing, we have to cover the costs of it. So working with developers to make sure that that happens. But then they didn't fund it. And the interesting thing is the ordinance, step one, section 1 says we're creating this trust fund. Section 2 says we're going to fund it. And they never did it. And as usual, city council waits until there's a crisis before they do anything. So when this amendment came out, I called for city council to quickly do something, do the right thing, get the private sector involved, get the philanthropic community involved, and make a step forward on funding the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, something they say they support. And they didn't do it. Instead, they wrote a legal language that mischaracterized the charter amendment and got struck down by the Supreme Court. That's putting politics over people. And that's what's wrong with the culture of corruption in City Hall. Now, I'm glad to hear and from my opponents that they've been listening to my talking points and have read my recovery plan and understand now that housing and affordability is more than the trust fund. It's about reforming zoning. It's about changing our tax abatements that make it so that you can tear down a 100-year-old home in Hyde Park and make your neighbors pay your taxes when you build a McMansion. That's wrong.
Thank you very much. The next question will first be responded to by Mr. Pureval. And this question comes from Joe Lonnie. Joe?
Thank you. My company, Thunderdome, has been growing and thriving downtown with restaurants like the Eagle, Bakersfield, and Pep and Dolores. Thanks to the work of 3CDC, 11 of the last 15 new businesses that have opened in 3CDC spaces are minority owned. And without question, this has made the district more vibrant and successful. We are keenly interested in continuing this trend, and it should happen throughout the city as well. What specific efforts will you undertake to grow and support minority entrepreneurs in the city of Cincinnati?
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. It's been a really difficult year for all of us, but particularly our Black community. If you're Black, you're more likely to get COVID. If you get it, you're more likely to die from it. Black-owned businesses are more likely to shutter and least likely to get loans from the government. So I understand why the community is frustrated and afraid. If I'm lucky enough to be mayor, my primary priority will be an aggressive economic recovery from COVID, and helping create Black wealth will be critical to that success. My Black agenda, which is in my economic recovery plan, will be centered around one word, Joe, and that is ownership. Black ownership of businesses, Black ownership of homes, and Black ownership of neighborhoods. Economic downturns like what we saw in 2020 show us that the most vulnerable are those who haven't had the opportunity to build wealth. We can start to fix that inequality through Black ownership. So here's how we do it. First, we make it easier, not harder, to open a small business. Right now, the logistics of getting that done they're overwhelming, they're confusing. I've led the way in the clerk's office of leaning into technology and innovation to streamline processes and make them more accessible and efficient. And that's exactly what I'll do in City Hall. Second, we've got to increase the capacity of trusted institutions like the African American Chamber, the Urban League, and the Chamber right here, their Minority Business Accelerator, who are already doing the important work of supporting Black businesses through creating more access to capital and providing support and mentorship once the business is off the ground. These organizations are successful, and we have to do more to support them. And finally, we've got to continue to make diversity and inclusion in our city contracting a priority. This is an area where we've had some success. Recently, we've gone from, I think it was 2% to 11%. That's great, but we can do more. By lowering barriers of entry for small businesses to qualify for our bidding processes, we can do better, and we will do better. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that we can do all this overnight. It's going to take time, and it's going to take all of us.
Thank you
But
so
with a
much.
shared commitment, we can get this done.
We need to move on to Mr. Prophett.
Great chicken, Joe, by the way. Thanks.
So small business is the heart of growing our economy. Again, I was raised on a small business, right? And I worked for a small business firm in which, as I said, I've learned sort of the construction field from. And so as a city, as a mayor, we must align ourselves with these different plans. Now, there was an alignment, our comprehensive plan of 2012, which really we sort of abandoning, which really calls for alignment, not only in terms of with the business community, but a lot of the other neighborhood business, or I should say community development corporations to help grow small businesses. That's what we're must have. We must have greater alignment with our strategic plans, right? The chamber does a great service with the business accelerator, providing this the knowledge to small businesses, the potential for small business to grow, not only to help them obtain capital, because that's where a lot of the problem lies, especially the African American Chamber and their strategic plan lays it out, is that small businesses, especially African American businesses, have problem obtaining capital. And so if we're able to grow small business, that's going to be one of the challenges we face. And I believe the answer is, again, is through greater alignment with all of our strategic plans that we have. I've read over the Chamber's strategic plan when they're talking about more inclusion, more growth, especially of minority and women businesses. It's going to take that alignment, that collaboration in order to grow small businesses. So I'm definitely in support of it.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you. This is all about public-private partnerships and the political will among not only the mayor, but the members of city council to recognize the importance of inclusion and making sure that we are addressing the needs from an economic standpoint when it comes to minority business enterprises. There's a lot of work being done by the African American Chamber. UC just submitted a plan, I believe it came out in January of this year, regarding the economic impact of African American businesses in this region. And it's significant. In other words, the continued growth of our African American businesses, the work that Steve Leeper is doing as it relates to attracting businesses into the over the Rhine area, that's all part of a comprehensive effort on all of our parts to be more inclusive. One thing I was told a long time ago, the city of Cincinnati would never reach its maximum potential until it fully embraces diversity. And that's a very powerful statement, because that's what it takes to make a city a great city, as well as a world-class city, is that people feel that they have the opportunity to open up a business and to benefit from the contracts and all of these things that the city has to offer. So my approach would be to continue what we're doing, to grow that, to even invest more into the African American Chamber, because they're the vehicle that we want our African American businesses to turn to for opportunities that may offer them within our city. And as a mayor, my role will be, again, an ambassador to sell the opportunities for businesses to open up, regardless of your ethnicity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you.
Begtrup.
Thanks for this question. It's so critical. I've built businesses and I've understand the challenges of getting a small business off the ground. It doesn't end day one. It doesn't end in day 50 or in year 10. Here's what we need. We need a city hall that understands that people and small businesses are their customers. We need a city hall that's not an impediment, but a partner in business. One of the big ideas from our recovery plan is to create a one-stop in City Hall. When I talk to other small business owners, I hear City Hall described as Byzantine, right? You go there and they say, well, that's not my job. You got to talk to somebody else. And they give you the runaround. What we need is a small business one-stop that makes sure that when you show up at City Hall, you get everything you need. And also we need somebody in City Hall that's helping connect all these services. So I've worked with HCDC, with Cincinnati, with Centrifuge, with the Chamber. There's the Minority Business Accelerator. There's so many opportunities to support businesses, but we need somewhere we can turn that will help us connect with all of them. Another idea we have in the recovery plan is a minority seed fund. We should take money to start a fund that catalyzes private investment in Black-owned businesses. Why? Because they have different access to capital. It's why they got hit so hard. It's why so many companies couldn't get access to the PPP loans. It's because they didn't have access to the same institutional capital. The other thing we have to do is create a fair playing field at City Hall. I'm running the Only Clean campaign where I'm not taking any money from developers, while my opponents take tens of thousands of dollars from the same people they're going to give money to in the form of tax credits. That unfair playing field makes it hard for small businesses to compete for city contracts. And we have to change it. We have to, one thing that every business owner will understand is we all just want a fair playing field. We all want to be able to see the same thing when we go to City Hall and ask for a permit or ask for a development to get considered for a development deal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oops, the timer is going off. Councilmember Mann. Sir, I believe you're muted.
There we go. The watchword of the time. Can you hear me? As my colleagues have said, this is the critical issue for this community going forward. I'm happy to say there's been a lot of progress since 2013. The percentage increase in contracts with minority businesses is up by 380%. That's a really significant increase. That doesn't mean it's anywhere where it needs to be. Another opportunity that we have just now is with this $291 million that has become available to us under the American Rescue Plan. The proposals that came from the city manager and the mayor propose an additional $3 million for the minority business partnerships, collaborating with the Urban League and the Port. $5 million to enhance the Minority Business Accelerator under the Ascend program, which I think the Chamber is certainly aware of. These are the additional things that we should do. I think we need to take a critical look at some tools that the city imposes, or not tools, but policies that sometimes have an adverse effect on achievement in this area. There's something called prevailing wage. There's something called responsible bidder. There's something called project labor agreements. These are defended as providing good things, but they have a negative impact on minority businesses. And I think we need to take a careful look at whether some adjustments are necessary to make sure that they are not barriers to what we're trying to achieve. Obviously, as many taxpayers in the city who are African-American, they deserve to benefit when the money is spent. So that's what the aspiration has to be. And we're talking about Black-owned businesses, and we should be talking as well about businesses that provide jobs to African-Americans. Because if you have Black-owned businesses that don't have African-American employees, you're missing the boat. Often they come together, sometimes they don't. So that's an area I would like us to take a look at carefully also.
Thank you very much. Our next question, the first respondent will be Mr. Prophett, and this question comes from Amy Spiller.
Thank you, Katie. As a public utility, Duke Energy is engaged with the city, READY, the port, the chamber, and other economic development engines working together to develop strategies for job growth in our region. We're part of the team that helps with new site development, and we're invested in growing our communities. What are your specific plans for helping local companies grow here and for attracting new companies?
Well, that's a great question, Amy. And so, as part of the regional's strategic plan, in which I read, that we have to support those businesses by developing policies that help stimulate growth. Right now, I want to make sure that everyone knows I don't know all of the answers to the problem, but to the issues that we get at. But first, what I'll start with is a professional city manager, one that is certified in how to actually run a city, and also to select those people in those positions, especially into economic development, that will be better suited to get at those issues of growth, right? And how to develop these different projects that it will take. Not only to sustain the businesses that here are in our city and regionally, but how to attract new businesses based on these projects that public policy can help influence. Just like the opportunity that issue 7, the passage of that presents by expanding our transportation capabilities. That's going to help attract new businesses and possibly retain more of our businesses. And so as a mayor, again, hiring a professional staff, starting with the city manager, is going to help us get at those issues that will keep businesses in our region, as well as attracting those new businesses, especially the creative class, as we move forward as a city.
Thank you so much. Senator Thomas.
Thank you. One of the things I do at the state level is I market my city, I market my district, and I fight for capital dollars and to come to our city to address some of our growth. The same applies at the local level as a mayor. The mayor has to be the ambassador to market the city, to get out and sell the city to the world. The Port Authority, Ready Cincinnati, and some of the other entities, they find the locations and they get them ready. And so my job as the mayor is to sell my city to the world. And so this, and so what they're doing now, one of the things I do at the state level is have interested parties meetings, bring in all of those who have an interest in what we're trying to do to talk that through and come to a solution. It sounds like that's what the city has done with Ready Cincinnati and the Port Authority and all the other 3CDC and whomever has an interest in this area. And so that is the model that you want to continue to project in getting things done that is in the best interest of the entire city. And it takes that kind of collaboration. They're the experts in all those various areas. I'm a mayor. I'm selling my city. I'm sending a message that this is what our city has to offer, and encourage that type of interest from all over the world. So I say the simple answer is, let's keep doing what we're doing when it comes to this area. And maybe we can find ways to expand it, as long as it's bringing development, which means jobs, which means resources to address all of these other issues through income tax. So that's what I'm talking about. And I think we can do it and continue to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Begtrup.
You know, I'm in my third decade of working on innovation and economic policy. When I worked in Congress for Gabrielle Giffords, I worked on legislation that got passed that was about innovation districts and clusters. It's actually why when I came to Cincinnati, the partnership, when it was at the chamber before it was Ready Cincinnati, asked me to help with their clusters initiative. And the way we're going to move forward is by focusing. Obviously, we have a lot to do, which I've already talked about on helping businesses grow. but also focusing on the strengths of our region. We have some of the best logistics minds in the world. We have the greatest consumer product company in the world. We also actually have a lot going on in renewable energy, which I think a lot of people don't know about. And so building off of our clusters is how we're going to win. I've created multiple companies here in Cincinnati, and I've recruited talent to the city, and they stay because Cincinnati is a great place to live. And we can't lose sight of that. That if you want great talent to stay in Cincinnati, whether they come for a startup like mine or whether they come from Children's or P&G, we want them to tell P&G, sorry, but I'm not moving again. I'm staying here in Cincinnati because we have good schools, because we have a livable city. It's why public transportation matters so much, because we want people from the coast to be moving to Cincinnati. People are fleeing. My friends on the East Coast and West Coast are moving across the country. We want them here. Now, I'll tell you a couple other things. I actually had this suggestion to the chamber. I don't think you took it up on it, but like I wanted a billboard in Silicon Valley that said, if you can work from anywhere, why are you still here? Move to Cincinnati. And we're going to invest in our own talent as well. I've suggested a skills bank, an evergreen fund that works on upskilling, that invests in the people of Cincinnati so they can have the jobs of the future. We need to be ready for a 21st century economy. And there's no better way of doing that than by electing a mayor who's building the 21st century economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Mann.
Yes, I would start answering that question by pondering why my adult children came back to Cincinnati. They all went someplace else, and we thought we were gravely at risk of having our grandchildren be across country. They came back because of so many of the things that are at a class that sometimes we don't even appreciate. When folks visit on business in my law practice and walk through OTR, they are amazed. I had a group of lawyers from New York say, "This looks like Brooklyn to me." So we have the infrastructure, we have the history, we have the beauty of our hills. So we are very, very competitive. But the other part of this is not to grow complacent and not to think that people are going to come just because we know what a great city and what a great place it is. The city, in collaboration with the chamber and other groups, has to be very aggressive about promoting our city, being willing to talk to entrepreneurs, to talk about businesses that are looking for new locations, about the tools that are available to them. We have to be ready when it can happen otherwise, to use our incentives and not be at all ashamed about offering tax credits, direct subsidies, tax abatements, or what have you, where it's in the public benefit. And it is sometimes, and we have to make sure that we use those tools. We should be very proud of what we have, and we should be not the least bit complacent about assuming it can continue without continued, very active, very enthusiastic efforts.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pureval.
Let me be very clear about this. We have got to grow after the pandemic. Beginning in the mid 20th century, Cincinnati's population fell decade after decade. In the last few years, though, because of the chamber and the efforts of so many more, we've begun to turn this around. Then the coronavirus pandemic hit, and we're still working to pick ourselves back up and move forward. But Cincinnati is strong, and we can not only recover, but continue to build a better, bigger, and bolder city for all of us. That means helping small businesses get started and then helping them grow once they're open for business. It means stimulating more investments as we seek to develop our vision for the future. I think it also means creating a world-class workforce by educating and training Cincinnatians who are already here and enticing those who would want to call this city their home. Here's just a few specific ideas from my comprehensive plan. First, we've got to leverage our strengths, our strong companies and institutions that are already here, and incentivize them to work with our smaller businesses to help them grow. A good example is Originalities and two Black-owned businesses, small businesses, entered into partnerships with the Reds and the Bengals to license their gear. That's great for those small businesses, but it's also great for the Reds and the Bengals. I think that's a model moving forward. Second, we've got to boost lending to small businesses by partnering with our banks. access to capital is the biggest reasons businesses don't start and don't grow. I think we can fix that together. Third, we've got to attract not only employers, but also remote employees. We're in a new economy with Zoom and all the rest of it. And to compete, we've got to start thinking strategically and innovatively about the next decade. And finally, for me, I know we talked about it earlier, but it always comes back to infrastructure and transportation. To continue to not only better serve our existing community, but to compete for future talent, we've got to continue to improve our infrastructure. The public transit levy will be transformational,
Thank
but
you so
as
much.
we move forward, we also have to
We'll
think
need
about
to
our
move on
roads.
to the next question, and the the candidate that will start that next question is Senator Thomas. And question number 5 comes from Joe Lonnie.
Thank you. The Chamber Center for Research and Data says that our region's accommodation and food services industry, my industry, is still down 19,000 jobs compared to before COVID. That's about 20% of our overall workforce. Post-pandemic, we have a challenge as a city to help small businesses get back on their feet, to get people back downtown to the offices and job hubs, and to welcome travelers back to the city. You'll be leading a city post-pandemic. What will you do to make sure we can restart with economic momentum? Thanks.
Very good question. Thank you for that question. You know, I've always said when I hear members say that they've already got their plans and they're going to spend da 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 da, I think that's a mistake. I think we need to see where we are post-pandemic. One of the areas that we definitely need to take a look at is where are our small businesses at? What shape are they in? Are there those that are about ready to shut their doors, or those that have already shut their doors? And so we got $291 million coming in. And that money clearly is designed to bring us back and make us whole, if you will, in our city as well as our state. So to answer your question, I would take a real close look at all of the areas of our small businesses and begin a process of making sure that we shore them back up so that we won't lose anymore, and then reach out and try to find those that we may have lost and bring them back and get them back on course. Small businesses is the backbone of any city. It's just that simple. And you have to understand and appreciate how critically important that is to the growth of your city. And so I say to all of the small businesses out there, if I'm your mayor, be prepared to allow me to help you get back on your feet and put you in a position pre-COVID and get these folks back to work. The last thing I want to see is losing so many of our workers permanently from the impact of this virus, when we have the capacity based on the dollars that we have to bring those businesses back up and get our city back to where it should be. A city should be clean, it should be safe, and it should be vibrant. And that's what these dollars will help us do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Begtrup.
So Joe, when you were struggling in the pandemic, where'd you turn? The chamber? I've talked to a lot of your colleagues. They turned to the OTR chamber, or some of my small business friends had turned to the African American chamber or to the Greater Cincinnati chamber. I didn't hear a lot of people say they turned to City Hall, and it's because City Hall doesn't work at the speed of business. We have the challenge that we have a City Hall that really, like our state and federal government, left everybody wondering what was going to happen next and what the city was going to do. And we need a city that's listening to the business community and helping. And I think that's really the big challenge. It's why I bring up this idea of a one-stop, making it so that we have somebody whose whole job is to make sure we are servicing small businesses, and also making sure that the same message is getting out through all the channels. We want all of our small businesses to succeed, right? This is the cooperation piece. When you're talking about trying to get through the pandemic, that's not something that is a competitive advantage of you figured out where you could find PPE and they didn't, right? This is changing the culture in City Hall and in our city to one of cooperation. But I think we also have to be realistic about a changing economy. I don't think you or I or anyone here can tell us exactly what the next year is going to look like for businesses. But what the chamber can do and has done very, very well is make sure that everybody knows what's going on with their members and small businesses so we can get out there. And there's a lot of community movement on that. And I wish I saw more from the mayor as just personal leadership saying, hey, I went to Originalities, as Aftab mentioned, and I went shopping and bought some clothes. And there weren't a lot of people there, but we can spend our money there instead of spending our money on Amazon, right? And making a point of getting to restaurants. But really, we've also got to be thinking about the economy is changing. We're not going to have the same level of those service
Thank you
industries,
so
or we're going to have
much.
something different.
We need to move on to Councilmember Mann.
Well, first of all, I think we limit ourselves by talking about getting things back to where they were. There's an opportunity here to envision getting things way beyond where they were. And that's what we should think about. And I think that will happen. Part of it is celebrating the uniqueness of our city. Part of it, to Joe's specific question, is providing additional support for his industry. And Gavi apparently is not aware of all the millions of dollars that have already been spent by the city to support restaurants and bars, all the efforts that we've made to open up public right-of-ways for outdoor dining. And I cannot tell how many times I've seen news clips about the mayor and his family eating here, eating there. So we have to continue those things. I'm chair of the Budget and Finance Committee. Cecil is right. We've got $291 million. It presents a unique opportunity to make sure we get it right and that we spend the money in a way that, first of all, deals with the damage that's been done to the government, to government employees, to the private sector, and businesses and individuals. But beyond that, we have to envision the transformational things that can be done with this money. This is a once in a generation opportunity. 291 will be half of it comes to us next month. Half a year from now, it has to be spent by the end of 2024. We're having hearings and we'll continue to take up the question of how the money can best be spent. There are a lot of interesting proposals on the table, including something like $6 million for the restaurant business, $7 million for cultural arts institutions. And I've mentioned some of the proposals for the minority community, economic recovery, and the like. Neighborhood business districts have to be a part of that. We have to understand if we're going to not just recover, but end up in a place better than we were before, we got to make sure that the money is spent in a way that supports not just downtown, but neighborhood business districts and neighborhoods.
Thank you so
as well.
much. We'll
Thank
need
you.
to move on to Mr. Pureval.
Thank you. It's been a really tough year and we've all struggled, but it's been particularly devastating year for our live events industry, our small businesses, and Joe, our restaurants. So when we respond and recover, we have to be targeted, specifically supporting those industries and supporting all of our neighborhoods, including the central business district. The downtown area is the engine that drives the economics of not just the city, but the entire region. So when we bounce back, we have to prioritize getting people back downtown. Again, a couple points from my plan. First, I fully support the incredible work the city is already doing to address this, expanding outdoor dining, expanding outdoor entertainment districts, and making the downtown area more walkable. And partnering with the chamber to help local restaurants in the winter, I thought was a really great idea. I will continue these important efforts, but we have to do more. We need to see the same efforts in our neighborhood business districts. Small businesses in the other 51 neighborhoods need the same creative approaches. Additionally, third-party delivery apps are crushing our local businesses. That local money should stay local. We should bring back the fee cap of 15%, at least in the short term, because it keeps money in our local businesses and it encourages people to return to our restaurants in person. This is critical to lifting up our downtown and the residents who depend on it. Finally, as mayor, I will use the bully pulpit to run an aggressive marketing campaign that lets the entire region know that Cincinnati is open for business. We need to encourage people to come back to the city and patronize our small businesses. That comprehensive approach is essential to lifting us out of COVID. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Prophett.
Yes. So, the question was in the post-COVID. I think that we have to accept the realization that we may not be post-COVID for a while, right? And so part of the challenges that we faced when COVID hit was really the lack of leadership, and that was at for several different levels. And certainly I saw it here at the local level at the city in terms of what policies that we weren't going to do. Now moving forward, how to re-engage, how do we get folks coming back, getting back to restaurants, right? Getting back to these public venues, right? And so I don't know if there is a group, a collaborative group, a work group, if you will, right, to really best practices, not only here that's going on locally, regionally, but throughout the world, of what makes people more comfortable coming back to a restaurant, dining it out, inside or outside, or a venue, a public venue, where they would be feel comfortable. Infectious control will be, I believe, on our mind for years to come. So I think we're forever changed, and I think we have to understand or accept that reality. But now we have to find out what are best practices in order that will encourage our folks to, dine and partake in public events, right? And then we're going to have a robust marketing strategy to tell us, hey, these are the safe things that you can do, because we have evidence that says that this is the best mitigating efforts or protocols that we have in place in order to have gathering events, right? And so I think that it's going to take some leadership, but it's also going to take some collaboration to those folks, Joe, from the restaurant industry, the other sort of public gathering, events that to come together and establish what these best practices are.
Thank you. Moving along. The first respondent on this next question will be Gavi Begtrup. And this question comes from Amy Spiller. Amy?
Thank you, Katie. A government that functions well and is free of corruption is important to the region's public image and its business climate. We also know that site selectors use local news to determine whether a city is a place to grow or relocate. Obviously, we've all read the headlines from City Hall lately. If elected, how will you create a culture of honesty, transparency, and collaboration at City Hall?
Yeah, this is the most important question in our debate and in the future of our city. We have a level of corruption, a culture of corruption in City Hall we haven't seen for 100 years. And 100 years ago, it took an outsider in Murray Seasongood to step in and clean things up. And that's what we need now. I'm tired of career politicians who always put their donors over people, and we're seeing the outcome of this. The fact that I have to update my talking points to now say 4 members of City Council. Just the other day, we were on another forum, and I heard one of my opponents say it was only 3 members. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal. If business can't trust City Hall, we can't grow. And this is the point, right? So I'm running the Only Clean campaign where I'm not taking money from developers that have business in front of the city. And that's important because, as I said, we need businesses to have a fair playing field. We need somebody who's more interested in the people of Cincinnati and put the people over politics. I'm not a career politician. I'm not doing this because it's a stepping stone or a nice point on my resume. I'm doing this because, as a business owner, as somebody who's built schools in this city, as somebody whose kids are growing up in the city, and I want to keep in this city, I believe that we have to lead with humility, openness, and trust. I've written about this issue. Inc. magazine had a whole article about me talking about my leadership style. We need to have integrity. We need to have leadership and ownership at every level. That's how I've run businesses, and it's how I'll run the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Mann.
I am a career public servant, and I'm proud of it. I think it's an honorable profession. I am not a member of the Gang of Five. I've not been indicted, and I don't think anybody questions my integrity during my years of public service. We are undertaking reform. We have a blue ribbon panel that was organized pursuant to legislation that I introduced, that's being led by retired Judge Anne Marie Tracy, who had service in her career as chair of the Ohio Ethics Commission. We've asked a series of serious questions, including whether a code of conduct should be developed governing the behavior of council members that might intrude into the development process, and developers, whether developers who give money ought to be prohibited from doing business with the city. But the key, I think, is twofold. One is transparency. And obviously, Gavi is very proud that he's not taking money from developers. I don't know what his definition of developers might be. Someone who might develop someday, somebody who has developed, or is today developing. We have in a First Amendment, we have we finance campaigns with donations and nothing else. But at the end of the day, all the legislation in the world, all the charter amendments in the world won't make a difference if someone is evil and is determined to be corrupt. If someone says, for my vote, give me money, and someone is willing to give a person money, that will happen no matter what the scheme is. I could not be sicker. I could not be more disappointed with what's happened in the last year than anyone else. But to suggest that anyone who happens to be there now is also tainted by that is outrageous. And I won't accept that implication. And I won't accept the suggestion that we can reform our way out of this. The question is the integrity and the honesty of the people that we elect. It's on us, the voters, to decide who we trust to serve us at City Hall.
Thank you. Mr. Pureval.
Corruption is a massive problem holding our city back from what it could be. Obviously, we have to solve this corruption issue for the sake of solving the corruption issue, but it's also important for how we win the next decade, because if people don't trust their city leaders, they will not invest their dollars here to open a business. They will not move here and raise their family here and stay here. So we've got to absolutely get this right. And while I applaud the work that's already been done, the corruption task force and the charter amendments, we've got to do more. I look forward to the recommendations from the task force later this year. And the charter amendments are a start, but those reforms are reactive after, changing the process for responding to corruption after it has occurred. What I think we should be laser focused on is preventing corruption. And I think the best way to do that is to increase transparency. Right now, our ethics disclosures for local elected officials just do not provide enough information to hold our officials accountable for relationships with people who might have business in front of the city. The good news is that we already have a model in Ohio. We don't have to recreate the wheel. The state legislature in Ohio has much more rigorous ethical reporting standards. I think the first thing we need to do is to drive more transparency and prevent ethical violations before they become full-blown corruption issues. So this is a day one item for my administration, and it's a very distinct and I think straightforward way to provide more transparency in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Prophett.
Yeah, so I wrote a op-ed a few weeks ago to the Enquirer. It's titled, "How did the stronger mayor influence corruption at City Hall?" And I asked that question because from my experience as a senior military officer, oftentimes when you had misadventures or bad events, especially by individuals, you have to do an assessment of the culture, of the climate, called command climate, right? And so, and as a public servant, a chief officer for the fire department, I saw, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running, I have insights to City Hall where there was a lack of accountability. And I also saw other political leaders, not saying everyone is involved in the corruption, but what I'm saying is there's a lack of accountability to challenge your colleagues when they start getting off the road. A lot of times you see these behaviors before they actually become illegal, right? And so that's why I said, how did the stronger mayor, how did our relationships change, right? How did the mayor and council's relationship change? Especially I heard Councilmember Young, and he's been indicted for his text messaging, but he said he did it to challenge the mayor, right? And so there's some examples of these relationship change. How did the relationship between the mayor and the manager change? I mean, we've had what, 2 or 3 city managers, right? And so how did the relationship between, the mayor and department heads change, right? And so I believe If we're going to get back to good governance, we really need to look at how did the relationship change between a stronger mayor? The mayor, is the policy, sets the vision and sets the policy, but the manager is the chief executive. So I really think we need to look at that closely.
Thank you. Senator Thomas.
Thank you. Good question. When I went up to the State House, the first thing I did was I sat down with each one of my Republican members of the Senate to introduce myself to them and to allow them to introduce themselves to me. One of the things I do not do is let someone else define who I am to them and allow someone else to define me to someone else. So I wanted to build that relationship. And this is about building relationships and moving our city forward. Honesty, transparency, collaboration, trust, all of these characteristics is what makes up a good leader. And as a mayor, the mayor has to have vision. And once he has that vision, then he has to impart that vision into his city manager. And then he would sit down with each member of council and talk about how can we work together and have some common ground, find some common ground. That's what the purpose of sitting down, set your politics aside, and let's talk about what can we do? What do we have in common? What can we do to work together? And always operate with civility. That's critical as we're going to have 7 new members of council. And I know the 2 that'll probably come back if they win, but the other 7 are going to be new. So it's going to take the creative effort of a mayor to let them know who I am and my vision. And hopefully my vision will connect with their vision. And if not, then we find that common ground on the things we agree on and we move those efforts forward. That allows for everybody to feel ownership and to be a part of the conversation. There are 9 members of council. They all are part of the process, and I would invite them to sit down, open door policy, and let's move our city forward and set aside all of the stuff that has happened. We'll get
Thank
past.
you so much. Thank you. This will be our final question of this afternoon's forum. And the first respondent here will be Councilmember Mann. And the question comes to us from Alou Diouf. Alou?
Thank you, Katie. Several years ago, the City of Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati, and the Chamber partnered to create Cincinnati Compass to make Cincinnati more attractive and welcoming to immigrants. Currently, 6% of our city are immigrants from other countries. Tell us how you would use the position of mayor to prioritize growing our immigrant population and prioritizing our position as a global city.
Happily, I was present when the Compass program was announced. I support it. I think it's done great things for us. And I think we should consider the potential to have more immigrants live in our area to be something that will be of great benefit to us, to them perhaps, but to us as well. All intelligence, all innovation, innovative ideas is not restricted to people who happen to be US citizens. We, in my experience, greatly benefit from ideas and intellect and the diverse experiences that immigrants bring to our city. I happen to have close friends who are from elsewhere, and it's so exciting to learn about them and their societies and their values and their religions. That's something that has to be continued. And obviously, it also has an economic side in terms of what those folks can do for us, and also what the businesses, business and economic activity in their home countries, those linkages can do for us as well. So I think it's something we should try to continue. It's a great benefit, and I, as the mayor, I will do everything I can to celebrate that diversity and try to enthusiastically communicate to the entire community that this is a good thing, which can only make our city better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pureval.
Thanks for this really important and frankly timely question. Representation matters. It matters to little brown boys and girls when they look up to people on television or their elected officials. It's important that they see themselves reflected in their leaders. reflected in the community that they're trying to serve. That's a big reason why I entered public service in the first place, because as I was growing up in the Southwest region here in Ohio, I didn't see very many people who looked like me. Cincinnati is leading the way with so many diverse countywide and city elected officials. We've got a strong start on representation, but the second piece of this is growing a more diverse and ethnically diverse community, because the sad fact is Cincinnati is not very diverse. And on top of that, unfortunately, we are relatively segregated. In order to compete and win the next decade, we have to be a destination for people to come here and to stay here from all around the globe. And that's why we have got to be a leader on welcoming immigrants, but also calling out and being clear-eyed and clear-voiced about racism and inequality where it exists. There's been a recent countrywide spate of increasing violence against Asian Americans. As an Asian American, I feel this personally, and it was so important for me just a couple of weeks ago to attend an event that was led by the Chinese Chamber of Commerce to stop Asian hate. I was there to speak, but so many other leaders were there as well. We have to continue to be a place that is safe and welcoming for all kinds of families. That is so critical if we want to win the next decade. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Prophett. Sir, you're on mute.
All righty. Thank you. So, Cincinnati truly is at a crossroads, right? And how we want to define ourselves, especially given all that has occurred, with the corruption. I think that we're poised to make a 180-degree turnaround. So when you're talking about attracting folks, and I have somewhat experience in international travel, just a bit, but you got to make it sort of creative, right? Got to make it attractive, right? This city here, this Midwestern city that's innovative, right? That accepts or has this arts sort of segment, right? Where attract people. We asked our businesses, especially our corporations that do international business. I'm sure that they will give us some insights on what will create or what will attract immigrants to come to Cincinnati. And we also, seek our immigrant groups that are living here in Cincinnati for some information. Again, I want to be the collaborator in chief to bring those folks together. It sounds like what Compass is doing. I'm not familiar with Compass, but I will become familiar with it because it sounds like about collaboration. I'm sure they probably have some sister cities that can maybe help is one way, but we have to be that city that people want to come to because they see it as this city that's about equity and diversity and inclusion. So if you are an immigrant, you say that this is where the place I want to be, that actually has, right, this infrastructure where we have a multimodal transportation system that moves people throughout the region on public transportation with ease. So if we're going to be that international city, we have to act like one.
Thank you. Senator Thomas.
Thank you. I remember starting the conversation off a little earlier about what it takes for the city of Cincinnati to reach its maximum potential. And it says it will, in order to reach its maximum potential, it has to embrace diversity. So I want the city of Cincinnati, my vision is for the city of Cincinnati to reach its maximum potential by embracing the diversity, our differences. We're all intertwined, folks. My destiny is tied to every other citizen that lives in this city. And as a result of that, in order to reach that maximum potential, you got to embrace that diversity and the culture and the respect for what everybody brings to the table in terms of their various cultures. I look to the future of Cincinnati as a city that's welcoming to all citizens. When the city embraced the plan to allow all of our people to be a sanctuary city, that was a huge step in the right direction. And it basically said that you're welcome in our city. And we want everyone in here to be a part of the city and have the belief that they have the opportunities to become a very productive member. And that's the ideas that you want to lay on the table when it comes to being a mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Begtrup.
You know, Cincinnati is a city of immigrants, and it always has been. We have a proud history of welcoming immigrants into this city. If you don't believe that, explain to me why we have a Fairview German school. Why do we have an Academy of World Languages? But immigration's changed, right? It's not just people coming from Germany, it's people coming from all over the world. And I've been a part of that. I actually led a delegation on behalf of the chamber to Israel to meet with small businesses there that led to a business moving to Cincinnati. I also have been involved in the private sector. We need to not just bring immigrants to Cincinnati, we need to keep them here. So as an employer, we were able to keep foreign nationals who had been trained in our city and in our region here in the US by going through the Byzantine process of immigration and getting H-1B visas, so they could continue to be a part of our community and contribute to our economy. It's more than that, though. It's about making a welcoming city. You know, I for years was on the Jewish Community Relations Council, which combats anti-Semitism. It's one of the oldest in the country here in Cincinnati. And it worked with our African-American community to rebuild the collaboration we've had for decades on civil rights. Work with our Muslim community to make sure that everyone understands we're in this together. And by the way, we actually do have sister cities. And the fact that people don't know about that is alarming, because the city has invested in these relationships with cities all over the world. And we need to reinvest in those to have cultural exchange and, quite frankly, to put Cincinnati on the world map. I, as mayor, will make the Queen City the great city it once was, where it leads the world on many different things. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we are at time today. In fact, we're just a couple moments over time, so I apologize for that. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. Thank you for our panelists for your great questions. And thanks to all of you for watching today and spending your afternoon with us. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we look forward to the next step in this process. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.